Hello and welcome to the 9 News Business Buzz, where we take up what's happening in business, how it impacts you and our economy. I'm your host, Ryan Frazier, 9 News business expert and CEO of Frazier Global. I'm joined by my fellow business expert, Ed Sealover of the Colorado Chamber of Commerce and the editor of the Sum and Substance. Ed, it's great to be back with you with this reformatted approach to the business buzz.
I'm looking forward to this, Ryan.
Let's get into it. You know, there's some pretty big things happening in Colorado in the business world, as you can probably imagine. In fact, the recent decision to move the U.S. Space Command headquarters from Colorado to Alabama could represent a $1 billion economic loss for our state. Now, some say this is due to politics, and they would not be completely wrong. But this move raises some serious questions about whether Colorado's high cost of living is also impacting our ability to compete for major employers. President Trump, who made this decision, actually had something to say. Here's that clip.
I am thrilled to report that the U.S. Space Command headquarters will move to the beautiful locale of a place called Huntsville, Alabama, forever to be known from this point forward as Rocket City. I want to thank Colorado. The problem I have with Colorado, one of the big problems, they do mail-in voting. They went to all mail-in voting, so they have automatically crooked elections.
All right, so there's a lot of buzz about this. Clearly here in Colorado, across the state, business leaders, community leaders alike are talking about this issue because it has huge impacts and implications for our state. But the folks down in Alabama, Huntsville, to be specific, are pretty excited about this as well. Here's a clip.
That's going to be a 100-year game changer for this area, and excited for what the opportunity that's going to give for people, for students, for people moving to the state, for just so many jobs.
Clearly, these folks are excited. Ed, let's get into this issue. Now, given our clear dominance in the aerospace sector, break this down. What does this mean for Colorado and our aerospace economy?
Well, this is never good when you're going to lose something that has a $1 billion economic impact. But let's level set here. Colorado actually has the highest per capita aerospace employment in the country. It's about 55,000 people who work directly for the industry, 184,000 indirect jobs there. This is not going away because Space Command is moving its headquarters to Alabama. Lockheed Martin, ULA, all of the companies that are making such an impact here are going to be staying here. So we've got that going for us. On the other hand, you look at this $1 billion economic impact, that's kind of like MSU Denver pulling up and leaving Denver. That's what this could be to Colorado Springs economy. A lot of employees who won't be shopping at the local shops, who aren't going to be eating at the local restaurants. And that's going to be a big concern down in that area.
Yeah, as I think about this, right, there's huge implications for Colorado. The folks in Alabama rightfully should be excited. But, by all accounts, from the folks I've talked to, Ed, in the business community, especially down in Colorado Springs, they've told me during Trump's first presidency, when the evaluators were looking at the pros and cons of keeping versus relocating Space Command, by all accounts, that Colorado Springs and Colorado ranked high on almost every issue that they had looked at, except two. Which I think is important when we talk about this loss, and not just the politics, but the business behind it, and that those two issues were cost of living, which was driven in large part by the lack of affordable housing, which we talk about almost every week here in Colorado, and believe it or not, schools. You wouldn't think that, but the quality of schools near the bases was the other factor that I'm told was a huge implication. Let's dig into this just a little bit, because it's important to understand this context when we talk about not only the ability of Colorado to keep businesses, but hopefully to be able to attract more industry to our state.
Well, Colorado and its congressional delegation is going to be rightly fighting to try to keep Space Command here. But if there is a lesson to take away from this, it's they've got to reconsider the cost of living a little bit more. CNBC ranks us as one of the 5 most expensive states to live in, one of the top quarter states to do for a cost of doing business in. This is something that the state can actually impact. I mean, we just did a study this year at the Colorado Chamber of Commerce, found out we're the 6th most regulated state in the country. Those regulations pile on to business costs, make it harder to hire here, and then those regulations also pile on to the cost of housing. Yes, we were talking about making housing more sustainable, but that also means the cost is going to go up, and our affordability crisis gets worse. So if we're going to take something away from this, let's look at our overall big picture economy economy here and say, how do we make it less expensive to do business in Colorado? And maybe these decisions are going to get a little bit harder in the future.
I think without a shadow of a doubt, we continue to be in Colorado at risk of being seen as too expensive to do business. It's something that I think lawmakers and business leaders and community alike have to take a vested and committed and active interest in addressing. No doubt, Ed. Let's talk a little bit more about a broader concern, and that is, we talk a lot about economic growth. How does this loss potentially ripple throughout the broader community and affect everyone, every Coloradan?
Well, like I talked about, this is going to be biggest in Colorado Springs, where you're going to be moving people out of the area to another state. And if they're not moving out of the state, many of them will actually stay here rather than go to Space Command headquarters. Those are going to be people who are now going to be looking for jobs. But I think one of the things you have to be concerned about, too, is that while big companies, the Lockheed Martins, the ULAs, are going to be staying here, what about some of these smaller space startups? We've seen a lot of them coming into Colorado. Are some of these going to think twice about that? Are they going to want to be near the federal contractors who they're hoping to get a lot of their payout from in terms of federal contracts, what they can do with the space program? I think the Colorado aerospace business community has really got to rally around that, and they've got to come together with a coalesced message. Look, we are here to stay, and we are still the place that has the greatest concentration of brains for this area, even if Space Command may be a time zone or two away. So I think that's where we've got to go now, is we've got to say, how do we stop this bleed? How does the business community, the aerospace community especially, get stronger in putting its message forward?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And I think you've cited some of these statistics, Ed, already, but I mean, our state received somewhere on the tune of $23 billion in federal aerospace contracts in 2024. What's the implications for that here locally? How does that affect the job market that is already, at least right now, kind of weak to slow growth that we're seeing? Colorado is the #1 per capita aerospace employment, as you mentioned before, and this risks not only a $1 billion economic impact, but 14,000 or tens of thousands of potential jobs, both here today and in the future. Ed, we got to begin to wrap up. I want to give you the last word, and we're going to get up out of this segment here.
I think one of the things Colorado should do, too, is throw out its bona fides with its universities. We have several universities, Colorado School of Mines, University of Colorado Boulder, even the Air Force Academy, that really specialize in this kind of training and education. They should really double down on that and say, look, we're still here.
And let's wrap it up. The business is buzzing in Colorado. Our goal is for you to stay informed, be engaged, and get ahead of the game. So be sure to stay tuned for more in-depth business news and discussions on the Business Buzz. We'll be back during the 11 o'clock hour to discuss what Colorado is doing to address the rising home insurance premiums in our state. For 9 News Business Buzz, Ed Sealover, I'm Ryan Frazier. Lauren Scafidi picks it back up after the break. We'll see you soon.